Hello, and welcome to Sailing and Cruising the East Coast of the United States podcast. I'm Bela Musits.
And I'm Mike Wasserman.
Hey, Mike, today's guest on the podcast is Phil Haydon. He was just on our most recent podcast talking about sail for epilepsy. Well, Phil has an extensive sailing background. He's a long-distance solo sailor. And when I talk with someone who does solo multi-day passages, or even non-solo ones, I always ask them about watch schedules and sleep, because for me, that's always a big deal when I do a long trip. So it turns out that Phil is a retired neuroscientist, and he has a real deep understanding about sleep, how it works, what sleep cycles are, and what can happen if you get too little sleep. So in this episode, we did a fair amount of talking about sleep and sleep cycles. And I'll tell you, I got a lot smarter about it all. And I also took a few things and wrote them down and said, next time I do a long passage, don't do what you've been doing, Bela. Let's try it this way. So I thought it was a great conversation.
Yeah, Bela, I mean, being trained as a social scientist and part of my work, this podcast gets me fired up because I think listeners will also really enjoy this idea that we can combine the science of sleep with kind of the art and passion of sailing, right? Transfer the scientific knowledge like Phil does directly into helping listeners become better sailors, especially those that are sailing long distances or sailing single-handed.
Yeah, agreed, Mike. So let's jump right into my conversation with Phil. Phil, welcome back to the podcast.
It's great to be back again.
Yeah. So another episode, the first episode was all about Sail for Epilepsy and an organization that you run. And in this episode, we're going to talk about solo sailing and shorthanded sailing. That's something you've done a lot of. And so if someone came up to you and said, what's the top 3 things that you have learned from your solo sailing and shorthanded sailing experience that you think are important and that everybody needs to know, what would they be?
So I think a really important thing is you probably really know how to sail shorthanded. You just don't realize you do. Because actually most of us learn to sail shorthanded.
Mm-hmm.
We go out as couples, right? So it's about gaining confidence. Another aspect is when you sail shorthanded, you have to do everything. So how can you look after your body and your mind while you're sailing? And I have some interesting stories about people and that. So that's all about sleeping, right? A third thing is think. Keep thinking. Think in advance. Prepare. Be ready. And even though I've done a few thousand miles of solo sailing, I always come back to, I'm thinking well in advance of a potential maneuver. What if? And I like to have 3 to 4 plans for everything.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. That's excellent advice. And as you were saying that, I'm thinking to myself, oh yeah, I wish I would have known that before I went out by myself for the first time. I remember going out on my current boat for the first time by myself, and it was approaching lunchtime, and I sail on Narragansett Bay, so it's crowded. I can't go down below for 5 minutes,
No.
right? So I go, I don't have anything to eat. What am I going to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I just didn't think of that. Right? I didn't think about, okay, you got to prepare, as you were saying. I gotta make some snacks. I got to make my sandwich in advance. I can leave it in the fridge, but so I can run down in 30 seconds and get it, but I can't go down to make a sandwich. So that, and all that preparation is I think, and as you said, anticipating what you're going to be doing. So I have a long, shallow, narrow channel that comes into our marina. So normally if I'm out with other people, when we're motoring in that channel, that's when other crew members will put out the fenders and the dock lines and all that stuff. Well, if I'm out by myself, I got to do all that before I get into the channel, because I got to pay attention and steer the boat while I'm in the channel. So you're absolutely right. Those are great tips. So tell us a little bit about some of the solo things that you have done.
Yeah. So my solo sailing, I'll say where it started. It was at the time my boat was in Boston Harbor, and I was going up the Penobscot Bay with my wife. Well, my wife slept through the night, and we ended up getting there. So I sailed solo effectively.
Yes.
And it took me a couple of years to realize you've been sailing solo all this time.
Yeah.
I had somebody there to help me if need be, but that's where I learned. But then really where I've done most of my solo sailing is out of Newport, Rhode Island. And it's in the race called the Bermuda 1-2, which is one person to Bermuda, two people coming back. And then in 2024, I did the Newport Bermuda double-handed division. And so this crossing the Gulf Stream solo. And everyone who's crossed the Gulf Stream normally smiles when you say crossing the Gulf Stream solo, because even fully crewed, that's a challenge. You never know what it's going to serve up.
Right. Excellent. So I've done solo day sailing.
Mm-hmm.
I've never done solo 24 hours or 48 hours.
Yeah.
I've done numerous passages with other crew.
Yeah.
And I've sometimes done it just with one other person, so just two of us.
Yeah.
And I've done it with two other people, so a total of three people on the crew. And for me, sort of the fatigue level between when it's just two of you versus three people on boat is hugely different for me.
Yeah.
Right? For the amount of sleep I need, amount of rest my body needs, etc.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about sort of rest and sleep and how you sort of manage that stuff when you're out by yourself.
Yeah. So the first thing to think about when you're solo or even double-handed is it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And you have to approach it that way. So even if you're sailing over not just one night, I have been out, I'll call it before the Newport Bermuda race, a very good friend and I were doing this, and he's a superb sailor. So we did a year in advance a coastal overnight race. And he was spent by about 8 p.m. Superb sailor, incredibly energetic. So I realized, okay, I have to teach something here. Just then went downstairs and just slept. But that was fine because it was about learning. So what I like to do is when we're doing short-handed sailing, or if I go solo to Bermuda, by 4 p.m. I take my first nap. It's about a marathon. You have to bank sleep, and keep yourself rested. Because especially before you get off the continental shelf, there's a lot of traffic, and you got to be ready to deal with it. And a lot of traffic without AIS as well. So your alarms are not necessarily going to help you. So we've got to remember it's a marathon. You've got to rest, and your resting at the early stages is going to pay dividends further down the racetrack, for example. So rest.
Yes. I've always thought that it's also that getting rest whenever you can is also important, because you never know when you're going to have to stay up for 10 or 12 hours.
Correct. That's right.
So having that reserve is really important, because you can get into bad weather or an equipment failure or something, and now you have to be up. You have no choice.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's key.
Yeah.
Really key.
Yeah.
So first rest.
Now in your professional life, tell us what you did there, because I want to bridge that to sort of sleep patterns and sleep schedules.
So in professional life, I'm a neuroscientist, or I study the brain. And I had one aspect studying some disorders of the brain, but the other was how sleep is controlled. And if you stay awake late at night, you get drowsy. One part of this is called a sleep homeostat, and it's pushing you to sleep. And this is an important thing to learn how to control when you're shorthanded sailing. And so based on I call it essentially the brain waves, they can inform us how to develop watch schedules for either fully crewed, but also for very short-handed sailing, how long to nap and how long not to nap. because there are ideal and absolutely awful periods of time to nap.
So
understand,
please say more. Please say more.
yeah. So this sleep homeostat, by the way, caffeine when we feel drowsy in the morning, we have caffeine, it's preventing the sleep homeostat, trying to make us go to sleep. Consider this slow homeostat as sleep pressure, the pressure to drive you to sleep. And think of it as a balloon. And during the daytime, as you're awake, air is inflating that balloon and it's getting bigger and bigger, and the pressure to drive you to sleep is increasing. Well, what you want to do is release some of the air, reduce the pressure. So what we do in our daily lives is, okay, that balloon gets full, we go to bed, and as we're sleeping, the air is coming out of it. We wake up in the morning, and hopefully the balloon's empty, and we're ready to go out our day. Well, when we're sailing short-handed, we can't get that 8 hours of sleep or 7 hours, whatever it is. But what you can do, every time you nap, a little bit of air comes out. And so if you think about, I'm going to use 10 minutes. I'll explain why. If you take a 10-minute nap, a little air comes out. You can then look around, check your sail trim, look for traffic, take another 10-minute nap, a little more air comes out. Then have another look out, sail trim, check your course, another little nap. And so with these little incremental naps, you're letting air come out of the balloon and reducing that pressure to go to sleep. I don't know if you know this, but almost all disasters that involve human beings involve sleep deprivation as an element of the contributing factor to the disaster. Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, some of the aircraft catastrophes, and it's been because people have not got enough sleep. The Challenger disaster, the engineers who were making decisions about whether that rocket should take off got 1 hour of sleep. And they came to work after 1 hour sleep. And, it's great that they, tried to get this rocket up in the sky, but your cognitive function is impaired when you don't get enough sleep.
It's interesting you bring that up, because if you drive a truck, it's highly regulated how much rest time you have to have.
And there's a good reason, right?
Right. My point. So we know it's a challenge. We know you have to have a lot of good rest time, but in other professions, we just ignore that.
Yeah. It's
interesting, isn't it?
It's that macho element. I can fight my way through this. I know I used to live in the Midwest, and we had many hours of driving. You get to about midnight and you're driving, and some headlights come along the road. And do you ever notice it's a little slower for you to decide what's going on?
Right.
That's a sleep deprivation. It's impairing your cognitive capabilities. And when you're at sea, you have to be able to make very informed decisions. We may not have, hundreds of, going 100 miles an hour is very tight traffic. You still need to make very careful, informed decisions,
right,
for the seaworthiness of your vessel.
Right. So you talked about 10-minute cat nap, then be up for a short period of time, another 10-minute cat nap. And I love your visualization of the balloon filling with air and deflating it. It's a great way to sort of think about it. Is there a way that I can train myself or prepare myself for something like that?
So before I did my first Bermuda race, I actually did training. And actually, I used to do it on Saturday afternoons. I'd say, I need a Saturday afternoon nap. Oh, darling, it's training. There we go. Everyone who's listening, you now have an excuse. But what I did, I spent a couple of nights where I'd have an alarm clock and I'd wake myself up, and then I'd go out to sleep, wake myself up. And after a while, I found, and when I'm on the vessel, I still use an alarm so that to wake myself. But I find I anticipate it now. So I just sort of wake up and I say, 30 seconds until my alarm was due to go off.
Yeah.
It's quite incredible. The brain becomes very adept at controlling the sleep duration.
So now we talked about sort of the 10-minute nap.
Yeah.
What's if let's say we're setting up a watch schedule. Let's say we have a crew. I have a
Yeah.
crew of 3 people on this boat, and we're going to go do a 5 or 6 day passage.
Yeah.
What kind of sleep schedule or watch schedule should we set up?
Yeah. So let's first talk about sleep cycles, the
Yes.
duration, and what the elements of them are. And that's what informs how you set up your watch schedule. So in any night of, say, 7-8 hour sleep, we have several cycles of sleep that are about 90 to 100 minutes in duration, and they're tacked onto one another. Okay, so you start off, let's say you go to bed, close your eyes, and you go into light sleep. The sleep gets 10 minutes. That's you're in light sleep. Then sleep gets deeper and deeper and deeper up until maybe 80 minutes. Then it becomes light again, and you enter into a new phase of sleep called rapid eye movement sleep. We have dreams during that, and that's a lighter phase of sleep. And at the end of REM, you've got one full cycle, 90 to 100 minutes. Then you go back in light non-REM sleep, gets deep, 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 back to light REM, and it just cycles like this. So you can see there are packets of 90 to 100 minutes. And at the beginning and the end of each packet, the sleep is light, which means you're easily aroused and you can actually think it clearly. But if you're 50 minutes into a sleep cycle, you're in deep sleep. And this is what people, they'll say, I can never take a nap because when I wake up, I feel worse than when I went to sleep. Well, that's because you've woken in deep sleep and you're not really able to perform well. So the key in setting up watch schedules is to set a duration where you wake when your sleep is light. So now we're all educated on this. So we know, oh, well, let's just do a short nap, let's say 10, 20 minutes, or let's get a full sleep cycle. And so with that, you can start developing your own watch schedules. So people say to me, well, how many hours should I do? I say, well, it does depend, because what do you want to do in addition to sleeping? So when I did the Newport Bermuda race, Alex and I, we set up a 2-hour watch schedule. This allowed one person to go beneath, take the life vest off, get themselves comfortable, go to sleep, get about 90 minutes, wake up, get themselves ready to come back and take over. We then took a 30-minute overlap period where we could debrief. We'd often, we might have a snack together and we just have that time together. Then another 2-hour session would begin. And it worked incredibly. And I have videos of the passage. And when you look at the videos, it's either me or Alex in the cockpit. Well, that's because we just cycled through these cycles and they worked incredibly well. In fact, when we got to Bermuda, we were so rested that we were taking the stuff off the boat, drying it out, and we didn't even take a nap in Bermuda. We waited till the first night. Whereas you see other people are just totally
collapse. Right, they collapse when they get there.
They collapsed. So what is your watch schedule? You've got to remember 90 to 100 minutes. And then are you trying to cook afterwards? And this helps you develop what you want to do. So some people might say, I'm going to have a 4-hour watch schedule. Now, that doesn't mean 4 hours of sleep.
Right.
If you time to prepare, maybe 3 hours of 2 sleep cycles, then, time to, get yourself snacks, or in our case, heat up water to put into some freeze-dried food and get some energy.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is increments of 10 or so minutes or increments of 90.
Yeah.
90 to 100.
Yeah.
And it should be some multiples of those or multiple could be one, but
10 to 20 minutes is a good number.
Yeah.
That short one.
Yeah.
And there were some studies, Rich Wilson, when he was doing his first Vendée Globe. It was another race before his Vendée Globe. He had accelerometers on the boat and on himself. And so you could now, with a differential measurement, decide when the boat was moving or when Rich was moving on a moving boat. And there's a really great daily log from this data of the periods where he was inactive and by inactive, we'll say that was probably sleep. And you can see he had short periods, and then he had longer, sort of 90 to 100-minute periods. And it really beautifully demonstrates, the short and long elements. I will mention one of the difficulties with the short is you can still end up hallucinating. And so if I go on a 4 or 5 day sail, I try to get some long cycles in so I can get through a full cycle, and that prevents me hallucinating. Oh, I got funny stories about hallucinations. Before I figured this out for myself, so after about a day, if you don't sleep, you start to get visual and auditory hallucinations.
Yeah, that's where mermaids come from, right?
Well, I've seen my share, I have to tell you. I remember the first was quite incredible. Was that I was in this it was a cruising boat that I was starting my offshore racing, and I was down at the galley heating up some water, and the noise of the boat, is creaking and how. Well, I can tell you, I had 2 gentlemen on the boat who were speaking German, and I was answering them in German. Now I know about 4 words of German. But it was so incredible. It was just like it was real. And then there was another example where I could hear something, you're attuned to your sails. And there was something happening. I knew I needed to make a change in sail trim. Well, I had not rested enough. And I said, oh, it's okay. He'll take care of that. I was solo. But I was talking to someone down beneath about the person up in the cockpit who was going to take care of sail trim. After I figured out really how to rest and nap during I have never had that happen again.
So what are the warning signs that you're severely sleep deprived?
Yeah, you may not actually realize they're there. When I did a transatlantic sail, we tried a study to see if we could get an objective way of evaluating if you're too sleepy. And this is it's called psychomotor vigilance. Essentially what it is we had an app on the phone, and at a random time between 0 and 10 seconds, a light would go off and you then had to respond. So there was a stimulus and then you had a motor response. And what's known on land is as you become sleep deprived, your ability to respond is delayed, or you may start providing false hits, anticipating the light's going to come on. So we tried this task, and this was a fully crewed vessel. And my problem was I kept falling asleep as I was doing the task. So what I learned from this was I didn't have my sleep schedule, and we actually modified the sleep schedules consequently. But one thing that I've learned is if you have problems thinking, and you know there are times you just let's say the cogs are turning too slowly, it means you need more rest, and you just got to be willing to admit it.
Yeah, and when I sense that, what should my response to that be? What should I do?
Well, first you have to admit it's real.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's number one. And the second is you need to take a nap.
Even if it's 10 minutes.
Even if it's 10 minutes. Remember, and just think to yourself, I've got this balloon and it is full of air. And I got to get some of that air out.
Okay.
Every minute helps. Now, if you fill that with air for too long,
yeah,
and then go to sleep, it can be difficult to wake up because you're such deep sleep.
Yes.
So really don't let yourself, that takes weeks to occur, to that point where you can't really wake yourself with alarms. But just get even 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Then take another 10 minutes. And just, I've even though I understand sleep, I still visualize what I'm about the balloon.
Yeah.
And I just think, oh, I need some naps.
Yeah, that's a great visualization. And one of the things I'm taking away from this conversation is even if I don't feel like I need to take a 10-minute nap, if the opportunity presents itself, I should.
So this is, yes. So we like to set up watch schedules, right? Don't be rigid. A watch schedule, in my mind, is really, you're setting yourself a course, but you've got to be willing to adjust. And one of my friends, Roy Greenwald, he says to me, Phil, when the sleep train comes to the station, hop aboard. Right? So if you get the chance, take it.
Yeah.
And even take it before that balloon gets filled too much.
Yeah. I love your balloon analogy. I will remember that now forever. That's
I'm
great.
expecting a message one summer. You're going to say, Phil, that balloon was full and I took a nap.
I just hope it doesn't pop.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting. So what else would you like to share with our audience here?
Yeah. In terms of shorthanded sailing, I mean, don't panic. Maybe this is true for all forms of sailing. Just don't panic. And let me give you an example.
Yeah.
Of this was another training run. We're in a race. Normally we do a lot of racing, and I use it as training for big events. And Alex and I were on the boat, and I believe it was the Ida Lewis race. No, sorry, it was the solo twin run by Newport Yacht Club. And we had gone through the night, and it was about 5:30 in the morning. And it's all through the night, the winds had been like 6 to 8 knots. You know, it's a typical, like, oh my goodness. At least we had some wind.
Yeah.
And then we turn on a green buoy off of Block Island, heading back up to Castle Light for the finish line. And I hear this noise, and I look over my shoulder. I say, "Oh, it's still dark. Is that a cloud?" And we had our big kite up. I say, "Alex, kite down." And we're very practiced, and we got that kite down as fast as you can. And we had the jib back up. I was just not sure. And we got hit by the most intense thunderstorm I've ever been hit by. So as we're hand steering, and we're up at about 18 knots boat speed.
Wow.
And the last reading we saw from the anemometer was 58 knots. At which point the boat heeled over, the spreader was in the water, the anemometer blew off the top of the boat. And there were some other, everyone got caught in this, and there were sails ripped and so on. And Alex and I looked at one another. We had our life vests, we were tethered, because, again, anticipating the potential. Right? And we look at one another, and at that point, like, what do we do? There's one thing that's going to happen with the wind. It will subside. Don't panic. So we were clipped on. We just sat there. There was not much we could do. Don't panic. Then the boat righted itself, and we tied it up, and we sailed into the finish of the race. So
yeah.
I think not panicking is really an important element. But also we've gone through a lot of the procedures mentally before. Another one we recently had, I was sailing with a good friend, Joe Cooper, in another race out of Newport. And for peculiar reasons that would take too long to explain, all of the boat electronics failed, including the AIS. And we were coming into the night, and I said, I don't know if other vessels can see us, or we just can't see them. We didn't have any chart plot. So we decided we're going to turn back. So we motored back. We turned back. And then this intense thunderstorm. One of those where lightning's hitting everywhere around her. And with Joe Cooper, it's so great. We're just sitting there. He's such a calm individual. And he looks at the life raft. He says, "So Phil, if we get hit, what do we do? What's our protocol?" And it was such a calm process. We practiced it all before, except the reality of doing it. And I was like, remember, the knife is under the tiller. We cut this goes. I get we have practiced even, before the race, of course, who's going to do what, but we just went through the process. And I can't believe how when you think, anticipate, when you're in a situation, how everything can just slow down. And you can we didn't have to abandon ship. We didn't get hit by lightning, but we were able to just think through the process. And that's, I've had some good teachers around me who have, you know, helped me learn these skills.
Yeah.
Joe Cooper being one of them, who I've heard a lot from.
That's why we practice things.
Yes.
That's why pilots spend hours and hours in a flight simulator figuring out what to do when an engine quits working.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thankfully, but then what happened? Oh my goodness. After that, I said, well, you know, the lightning storm passes. Okay, well, just in case there's other problems, let's just check the engine or go on. And, you know, for when we get it to Newport Harbor. Of course, it didn't. So we sailed back into Newport Harbor with the jazz festival ongoing.
A little crowded harbor.
It was a very crowded harbor with the wind declining, and we're in a boat, and we had a handheld radio which was working, and we made our way slowly, ever so slowly, up it to the Newport Yacht Club, and we were within 100 yards of a slip that they had assigned to us so we could get in when the wind dropped. And I didn't realize how much current there is when there's no wind in Newport. Newport Harbor, and we end up holding on to a boat next to us at a mooring. And yeah, but what was great, I'm there with Joe Cooper, and just very calm. We know we know how to handle the boat. We know how to drop sails, raise sails, so on and so. And then we ultimately made it into the marina. Again, you know, practice.
Yeah, practice, and that your notion about certain individuals have a great skill at this. Of no matter what's happening, they're just calm and mellow, and that is contagious. It propagates through the situation, and it brings everybody down. Everybody gets mellow. I do some EMS, emergency medical services, work, and there's one person that I work with who, no matter what's happening, he is the most calming influence on the people working the situation and the people who are injured. He just has this great skill at it. So it's a skill I wish I was better at, for sure. Right. But that's an excellent point. So let me ask you another question. When you think about doing these short-handed races, how do you think about picking your crew?
It's picking crew is a significant issue. You have to have sailed with them before shorthanded, because when they're shorthanded, they are not the same as when they're fully crewed. Not necessarily.
Yes.
And a great sailor, a great bowman, for example, is not necessarily a great shorthanded sailor. You have to be able to do absolutely everything. Now, when we sail shorthanded, you know, we have the two of us, we have different responsibilities, right? Primary responsibilities, but you have to be able to take over from the other person if there's an issue. And I think there is not enough understanding of the need for the redundancy in the crew. Of tasks. You know, one issue is, how do you operate the satellite phone? A lot of people actually don't know. And so, you know, what I use a lot of tape and black marker in the boat. So, for example, on the navigation computer, there's a password. Well, a piece of tape with the password. It's a simple password. All those types of things, you'd really have to think about, how will that other person take over? And also, will the other will they be able to hold a watch schedule where short naps or there's 2 hours? And Alex became extremely good at this, and we became a very good team, and we practiced a lot, and he really took it on incredibly well.
You really have to be cross-trained in sort of all of the aspects of, as if you were on that boat by yourself, fundamentally.
Right, because it can happen.
That's right. It's easy for someone to get hurt, and
I think another important thing about and this may be true for all crew, the willingness to listen. You have to listen to one another, and as you know, the boat owner, I have to understand, I am not the skipper. I'm a co-skipper.
Yeah.
They're both co-skippers. There are certain situations where one person has to take overall lead, but you also have to have the other person trained so that they can take over from you. They have to be able to say, my boat. They have to be able to identify you're having a weakness. They are now in control.
Right.
And this is what I love about it. It's not just sailing. There's this whole intellectual and mental process associated with it. How do you control your brain? And how do you keep your brain sufficiently rested that you can go down and you can turn the computer on, you can download weather, you can make a new strategy, even though it's 4 o'clock in the morning when your brain doesn't want to be doing those things. It's really, really wonderful.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say about crew, not only is it important that they listen, they have that skill, but also it's important that they feel comfortable enough to speak up when they think something, even though, they might think, look, it's your boat, you're the captain, so you're in charge, but they need to be able to speak up and say, hey, captain, I don't feel comfortable about this, or have you thought about this part, right? Because that's another important aspect of it.
That's a very important point you make. I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah. And that's where getting out with on short sails is also important. You can learn who one another is and how you're able to mesh together.
Yeah. How that relationship works, right? Because it's an interpersonal relationship, and that has to work, because then it doesn't matter how good a sailor you are.
Right. And in our Newport Bermuda double-handed race, we ultimately won the race by 4 minutes. And I feel our key to success, and the people that we beat are incredible quality sailors. And I think part of the reason we were able to achieve was how we worked together. We trusted one another, but also how we rested.
Yeah.
Because there were decisions to be made right to the finish line. And you can make a bad decision when the race is that close. 30 minutes to go, and it loses you the race.
Sure.
I'm not saying the other teams didn't do good decision making or anything like that, but one thing that helped us was that we positioned ourselves through controlling our brains, by getting the air out of the balloon, by knowing how to work together.
Yeah. So my last question, when you're solo sailing, are there things that you do or do not do to I'm not asking this question very well, but so that you don't get hurt, so you don't get incapacitated, right? Do you set boundaries, or do you actively do something to sort of manage or mitigate the risk of you being injured when you're the only one on the boat? I'm not talking about falling overboard, right? Yeah. We sort of know how to do that, but just, don't sprain an ankle, don't break an arm or whatever.
Right. For me, one of the most important things is do things slowly. You need to go to the bow to attend to something. Don't run up there. Don't go at a fast pace. Take everything slow pace. Start the maneuvers early. Right? When you're going down, an area where you can have a serious problem, going down the companionway.
Sure. All right.
Because what happens at that point is you start relaxing. But don't relax. You have to be just thinking all the time of how things could occur. Something I like to do is, and this relates to going overboard. We let our guard down at times. And I talked to one of the people who runs the Bermuda one too. And he managed not to go overboard because he woke in his sleep and essentially went to take a pee, and his tether pulled him back. All right. Now, we were talking about this, and when I realized this, people sleepwalk. I'm not saying he did. And how can I prevent myself accidentally waking, not knowing I'm awake, go up the companionway into the cockpit? And so what I do, whenever I go down beneath, if I'm trying to take a rest, I purposely put things on the companionway steps that I will trip on. So if I were to get up and try to get out of the cockpit without thinking it stops me doing it. I mean, I just sort of develop these little tricks to overcome problems. I try not to do it so that I'll trip and injure myself, of course. But
Yes.
it's just something to, alert me and to bring me to. So I like to slow things down, think of potential outcomes, and of course we don't think of them all, but just slow your maneuvers and watch that boom.
Yeah. So that it's interesting. As you were saying that, I was thinking about our conversation about sleep and the sleep cycle. And if you get woken up when you're in that deep sleep, it takes you a while to sort of figure out what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I wake up and I go like, where am I?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're in that deep part of the cycle when that happens.
And that's when you can do something that may not be the best thing to do at the moment.
Yeah. And this is where, again, just slow down.
Yeah.
It's rare that you have to do something in a split second. Clearly, there are times like if you're awoken by an alarm telling you there's a vessel about to hit you, if you're able to make avoiding actions, certainly. But other than that, okay, the sail's flapping a bit. Well,
right.
Just take a moment. I have seen people who have wanted to just run up in the cockpit and take care of something without putting their life vest on.
Yes.
No, come on. Let's step back. Life vest, tether, and something to always remember: tether.
So tell me how do you do your tether? How do you run your jack lines?
Yeah. So my jack, the two parts of this. So my jack lines are on both port and starboard side, so they continuously running up to the bow. But I have the tethers tied to a stanchion. They're back to a cleat, but you never want to go overboard and get dragged behind the vessel.
Right.
So I have them actually so that you clip on just at the front end of the cockpit, and the tether cannot move backwards. So if you went overboard, you would always have boat next to you. So if you can envision the length of your tether, you have at least 6 feet where the tether cannot slide back. That means you always have the opportunity to pull yourself back up on the boat.
Okay.
But then if I'm, the boat's heeled over and I need to work on the sail on that low side, I clip onto the high side.
Yes.
And I always thinking when I'm clipping on, what would happen if I were to slip? And I've had the tether save me 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And because I had it on the high side, my feet went out under the lifelines, by 6 inches, but I didn't go out.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I also, you have 2 tethers, a long one and a short one. And when I'm right up the bow of the boat, I've actually done it where I take the tether, take it under the jack line, and then back up and clip onto the vest. So it's very short, because when you're up on that bow, there's not much, it would be easy to go overboard. And I did come off a wave in the Gulf Stream a few years ago, and I was in the air. My tether was just holding me to the jack line right at the bow.
Yeah.
They work.
Yeah. So I use my tether and I don't go out in bad weather, particularly not solo.
Yeah.
But I use my tether. I have a very short tether, and I use that so I can't go overboard.
Yep.
Because
exactly.
I did an experiment one day. I was on a mooring, just on a mooring, anchored, or I can't remember if I was anchored or on a mooring, just having lunch. And I said, I'm going to try this. I got my harness on and my tether. I hooked it to my jack line. I jumped overboard. I could not get back on the boat. Yeah. I have such a high freeboard.
Yeah.
Right. And I can't get to the back because just the way I went overboard. I couldn't get back on the boat.
Yeah.
Right. And that really set a light off in my brain that said, I got to figure out a way never to fall overboard.
No, I agree with you totally. And that's why I always clip onto the high side.
Yes.
Also, as you're moving around, don't release the tether and then clip it somewhere else. attach a second tether.
Right. Yeah,
before
I have two. Right.
first one. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a double tether. So I'm always strapped in. And my goal is not to go overboard.
That's what everyone's goal should be. Never go overboard.
Yeah.
That's absolutely the rule.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. So my biggest challenge when I go solo, and again, I go solo day sales, is not the sailing part. It's the coming back into port.
Yeah.
Coming back into my slip. Do you have any words of wisdom about that?
Yeah, so I'll tell you how I do it. How I used to do it and how I now do it. So I always take a long time to prepare the boat.
Yes.
For coming into the marina. I always make sure everything is tidy so that all lines are put away. You want to make sure that if the unexpected happens, you're not going to trip on something as you're trying to maneuver yourself on your boat in the marina. So, your fenders are out, so on and so forth. I then, something that is people don't appreciate enough about docking in a marina is wind direction and how it impacts your vessel. So for a long period of time, I used to, as I had in Narragansett Bay, I would find a buoy or something in the bay, and I would practice docking out in the bay. And it's like, okay, the wind direction is this. Let's imagine my slip is here. How would I approach it? And it is pretty interesting figuring out how does your boat maneuver in wind and what you should be doing. Now, what I used to do was I became pretty good at docking, and I just go in, I dock solo, and now I always call the marina.
Yeah.
I realize I pay these fees, and they have dock hands. There's nothing wrong with asking for their help. So I get them to come and help me at the slip, and then they're happy to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
I
do the same.
It's way better to be helped than to accidentally impact another vessel.
Yeah, yeah. But, I do the same. Yeah.
I think something people don't understand enough about docking is if docking goes well one day when you use a certain procedure, it's not going to go well every day.
That's right.
The wind's in a different direction. And that is something people need to learn. And I don't think there's enough time given to how to dock.
Yeah, yeah.
Another thing I also do is I always like to have 2 or 3 plans.
Yes.
I know where my slip is, but I also know where is what I'll call the abort slip, and how I need to do things in case. What happens if my engine dies? And I just, I have friends, they laugh at me. They say, Phil, you've always got plan A, B, and C. I say, well, I've needed them at times.
Yeah. A couple of good points you made there. One is, so where I keep my boat, I come in stern to with a port side tie.
Mm-hmm.
But I put fenders and dock lines out on both sides of my boat because I may have to come in differently. I may have to go into a different slip when I'm by myself.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I know in my marina that if the wind is from the south, I'm fine. It could be blowing at 30 and I can dock my boat. If the wind is from the east, I'm fine. If the wind is from the west, that's my problem direction because it's blowing me into my neighbor. Right. So I get very tuned in to what the wind direction is. There's a little bit of current. That's not too big of a factor where I'm at. But yeah, because that makes a big difference in how I tie. And I have my plan A and my abort. So my slip is on the same fairway as the fuel dock is. So I can always go to the fuel dock.
There you go. You're lucky. Yeah.
Right.
One mistake I used to make, and I don't make anymore, is approaching docking too slowly.
Yes.
You have to remember, you need water over the rudder to have control.
That's right.
And I see a lot of people docking too slowly. I realize the other side of the coin there. But also, if you're I reverse into the slip.
Yeah.
And I start reversing up against the wind, right? so that then the bow comes up and it's against the slip, even though the wind would blow it back onto the other vessel. And it was somebody there to help me, that they can just take the lines. But yeah, fenders all down that side of the boat between you and the other vessel. Yeah.
Very good. Hey, Phil, this has been a great conversation. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think that the message I'd like to give is short-handed sailing is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And most people actually know how to do it. They just don't realize they know how to do it. Because we're all going out. Often we learn to sail with just one other person, and we're doing short-handed sailing. Right. So it's about sail with somebody, but try it solo with them on board. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm setting up some presentations in the near future for people wanting to get into short-handed sailing, and my goal is to take them out on my boat, and I say to them, "You're going to do solo maneuvers, but there are going to be 4 of us here. So if there's a problem, don't worry.
Right.
You have other people around." So
yeah,
that's a great way to learn how to do it.
I agree. That's exactly what I did with my son. We went out and we said, okay, it's my boat. You just sit there. You're just the emergency valve.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. And then we changed roles.
Yeah.
So, because that gives you that confidence of, I can do all this stuff. I can pack my boat solo.
Yeah.
Right. I can jibe the boat by myself. I can do these maneuvers by myself. I can take my sails down.
Yeah.
But you have that other person there just sort of to make sure it's all okay. Oh, excellent. Phil, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. It's been a great conversation. Thank you.
Bela, gosh, what a great interview. This was kind of a masterclass on sleep science for sailors. What were your main takeaways?
Well, I'll tell you, Mike, I sure did learn a lot about sleep. And one thing I'm acutely aware of is that I need my sleep. And if I don't have sufficient sleep, I do not function well. I really can't push myself very far without sleep. And that's just how I am. And I accept that. So I learned a lot here. So, this notion about sleep cycles and making sure that you sort of get it in at least 90-minute chunks or multiples of 90 minutes, I think is really important. I also found Phil's sort of analogy of inflating a balloon and deflating a balloon to be, at least for me, a great way to visualize this, because I understand it, right? You lose sleep, a little more air goes into the balloon, it gets filled up a little bit more. And when you get sleep, the balloon deflates. What happens if you put too much air in the balloon? The balloon pops. So that's when you get in a lot of big trouble. So I just thought that was really interesting to me. I found the balloon analogy very helpful. And I found this notion of, doing things in 90-minute chunks to be also very helpful. What did you think, Mike?
Yeah, I love the idea that more precision in understanding rest and sleep. It's important for being a better sailor, and for racers, it can really give them a competitive edge when they're racing, right? What else did you? I'm just curious for you. As I'm just the sail very rarely, but for you every day, what else did you get from this that will shape how you either plan for your trips or how you might behave on the trip?
So on a trip, I always struggle with what should the watch schedule be. And, I think people have heard me say that when there's just 2 people on the boat, I always have a hard time because I always feel sleep deprived. And when there's 2 people on a boat, we typically do 4 hours on, 4 hours off. So a 90-minute sleep cycle is an hour and a half. So, you got to let yourself, after you come off a watch, it takes you a half hour to sort of mellow out. At least me, it does. And sort of, go in and put my head on the pillow and fall asleep. So probably 4 hours on and 4 hours off isn't the ideal way of doing that. I do find that if there's 3 people on the boat, we do 3 on and 6 off. And that works very well for me. And if you do the arithmetic, 6 hours is a nice multiple of an hour and a half with some buffer time in there on the edges. So that's one thing I've learned. So maybe I got to rethink sort of, if there's just two of us on the boat, this notion of 4 on and 4 off. Maybe need to do that a little differently. The other thing that I sort of learned is it looks like you can condition yourself to take short cat naps, which I've never been very good at. And so I got to try here. I actually, I've gotten to the age now, Mike, where on occasion, probably 3 or 4 times a week, I will take a nap in the afternoon. And typically that nap is an hour long, which is contrary to everything I learned from talking to Phil. But it's just sort of, I lay down, I wake up an hour later. So maybe that's my cycle. But so I got to try these sort of 15 to 20 minute ones and maybe take 2 of them instead of 1 hour nap. Take, a short 20-minute one right after lunch and a 20-minute one later in the day or something. I don't know, but I'm going to play around with that because I don't want to take a 90-minute nap. That's too long. So anyway, I kind of rambled on there. What,
Bela, do you use any of the sleep tracking technology, like on a smartwatch or on your phone or anything like that? Because that might be fascinating to see what your cycles actually are.
Yeah, so I do have one of those. I forget what it's called. It's not a little thing that'll measure my sleep and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I've looked at it, and I've never been able to garner anything useful from it. But that was before I had my conversation with Phil. So now I have a little bit more information, and maybe if I reflect back on the year's worth of data I have there, maybe it will enlighten me in some way about my sleep cycles, etc. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Even try a 20-minute nap versus a 60-minute nap versus a 90-minute nap, right? Set your alarm and see,
right,
and see what the data tell you.
Yeah,
you could do an experiment too. So I look backwards and try forwards, right?
Forward, exactly. Yeah. I got to try the 10-15 minute thing, or the 15-20 minute thing. I got to try that for sure. So see if that refreshes me.
I'm looking forward to your experiments. You have to report back.
Yes. All right. Anyway, it was a great conversation. What do you think? It's time to wrap this one up, Mike?
Absolutely. Listeners, thanks for joining us for yet another episode. We hope you found our conversation with Phil interesting and thought-provoking, just like we did. To contact us, as always, please feel free to send us an email at sailingtheeast, that's all one word, @gmail.com.
Hey, and if you enjoy the podcast, hit that like or follow button on your favorite podcasting application. And our podcast is now also available on YouTube. So if you know of someone that would make a good guest on the show, please let us know. We'll invite them on. So that's it for today's episode. Hope to see you all soon out on the water. So until next time, signing off from upstate New York. Take care.
And from over here in Münster, Germany, thanks for listening, and auf Wiedersehen.